During this presentation, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that we use to produce the hard surface, high quality models of the weapons. I'm not saying that there aren't any other different ways to get to these results. There are different kind of pipelines, different kind of methods, but basically these methods work for us, and they helped us to achieve ambitious goals. And basically, I will show them to you. I will show you the original intentions that we had, the challenges that we faced along the way, and of course the solutions that we found to overcome this. Basically, we didn't have all the pipeline set in place, neither the software, the review system. We developed them along the way, and basically it was an iterative process and iterative and learning process. Okay, let's get into it. First of all, before working for weapons, I worked on Assassin's Creed, on several Assassin's Creed titles, Revelations, AC3, Black Flag. Also, I worked on The Crew too. For me, Assassin's Creed was a really, really great project. It was very creative. I really enjoyed it. Here are some beautiful pictures from The Crew too. And here you can see some weapons that I did for Ghost Wildlands. I wasn't originally part of the weapons team. At first I was an environment artist, but I just saw the guys there doing really awesome stuff, and I decided to join them eventually because I was very impressed by their work. More weapons. And yeah, for me it was a passion project, really challenging, maybe a bit out of comfort zone, but in the end it was very rewarding because I learned so many things, and it was really, really awesome to work on. Before digging into the weapons topics, I want to say a few words about Ghost Recon Wildlands. Basically, it's a third-person tactical shooter set in a massive open world. It's entirely playable in up to 4 players co-op. It's set in Bolivia. It's about a drug cartel. You are one of the ghosts behind enemy lines. And in the game, there are a wide variety of environments, such as mountains, forests, deserts, and salt flats. It's a very diverse game. In this game, the weapons play a major role. They are a pillar of the game. You have a vast arsenal and many customization options, which allows you to play the game the way you want and approach the situations the way you want to. Now, in Bucharest, we were responsible with the production of all weapons and attachment models in the game, and of course their customization in the gunsmith. I'll talk a bit later about the gunsmith. Basically, we actually produced over 120 unique weapons and over 100 attachments. Now we're gonna watch a small trailer of Ghost Wildlands.
In dangerous country, you need to adapt, to change. Know when to become silent. Untouchable. When to learn alternate methods. Mix up the angle of attack. It's history. Or when absolute firepower is all you need. Our allies are the dirt, the grass, and the sun in the sky. We have no uniform. There is no single path. This is why we win. This is why we are ghosts. Summer soldiers. We are ghosts.
Yeah, as you can see, this trailer was basically focused on customization, and it really showed that you can change the weapon parts. Yeah, basically on now you can see a fan-made video showing the basic gunsmith functionality. I'll tell you a bit about the original scope of the gunsmith and our original intentions. First off, we wanted to show the weapons really up close, so you can zoom in on the parts, rotate the objects, see them from different angles, and see all the little nice details with high resolution textures. Also, we wanted to allow the player, we wanted to allow the player a lot of freedom to visually customize the weapons and be able to paint different parts individually. What's wrong with? Yeah, it's starting again. No problem. We wanted to show the effects of the harsh environment conditions on the weapons, so you can see visual degradation on them. They have dynamic aging. This can, of course, you can reset it in Gunsmith to make them clean again. And yeah, the more you use the weapons, the more the paint is showing signs of degradation and wearing. To achieve these results in production, we used the Substance Designer as a texturing pipeline. Basically, all the textures are done using Substance Designer. We have this tool integrated inside the editor, and this allows us to iterate on models and do changes much faster. For example, if at one point we decide to rebake a model, for whatever reason, it can be feedback or changes in design, we can easily do the bake and the textures all over again without actually having to manually create the textures. So this was really fast and easy process. Practically the use of Substance Designer involved also some production requirements. For example, we had to have very clean normal maps, very clean bakes, because Substance takes advantage of the normal map and of the curvature. So we really had to produce clean normal maps in order to get all the edges right and have very good results. Okay. Before going into some modeling tricks, I will make some small notes about our internal pipeline process and internal review system. Yeah, as you know, military authenticity is a pillar of the Tom Clancy universe. In order to produce the best looking models, a massive amount of research is involved. We took trips to firing range to learn about weapons, look at the details, see the inner parts, and of course actually shoot them. It was a really interesting experience. I mean, for me, it changed my perspective on weapons. It's a different thing to see them in games or movies, and it's another thing to actually use them. And my favorite was the revolver. I really like that. We were also in permanent contact with the authenticity experts in Red Storm, and they helped us through the whole process of delivering authentic weapons. Before starting the actual model, we collect all the info and a reference that we can find about it. You have to be very careful with airsoft pictures, because sometimes you can find some airsoft photos of weapons that are detailed and from certain really good angles, but it can be a trap, because if you rely on those, you might end up doing some details that don't exist or that were simplified for that model. So you really need to be careful with that. And of course, we will look for YouTube videos with field strip and disassembly of all the models. Here you can see, okay, just 1 second. Perfect. Yeah, here you can see an overview of the pipeline. For every model, we had three variants. Basically, you have the high polygon model, which used to bake the in-game versions. You have the gunsmith and the in-game models. They are actually different models. You have one gunsmith and one in-game, because in the gunsmith you can see the interiors, you can zoom in on the parts, as I told you before, and you need extra detail. So basically you need to have some extra care for the gunsmith model. What I used to do, I used to apply a black material in Max so I can actually see the silhouette of the object and just make sure there are no choppy edges in any place and that everything looks perfect and you can see a really nice silhouette with all the small details. As for the in-game version, it was optimized version of the gunsmith with, of course, with no interiors because you don't see them. And here you can see the three versions. This is a high polygon model with a handgun, and you can see the interiors that are modeled for it. When we did this, we need to take into account how much you actually see. So don't model any unnecessary parts. Just think about the way the weapon is presented in Gunsmith and put the detail where it matters. So yeah, if at one point I have the chance to maybe simplify some elements or remove them, I used to do that just to save time. But yeah, the interiors needed to be done also. This is how a weapon high polygon model is separated. Also here. Okay, here is actually an example of a customized weapon. You can add different type of attachments on it and really customize the gameplay the way you want it to. Some cool attachments up close. This nice model. As you can see, there are the interior parts. Yeah, in order to accommodate all the attachments on the weapons, we did a little trick. You have the Picatinny array where you fit the attachments. In reality, there are different sizes, different types. But we used the standard Picatinny rail in order, it was just a little trick to adapt the same attachment model on different weapons. So we can create this modularity on a large scale. Now, regarding feedback is really important for us. When you spend a lot of time working on the same model, sometimes hours, sometimes days, it's really easy to miss certain things about proportions or some details. Someone who takes a look at the model from a fresh perspective can really spot all these issues and really tell you the details that need to be added in order to produce a quality model. Here you can see some common things that are really easy to miss when you do some high polygon model. Most of them, as you can see in this image, they are basically there because of supporting loops. It's really easy to just put the wrong topology, put the supporting loops in wrong places, and you get you can miss lots of things. I mean, you need to get parallel lines. You need to have the right angles, and most important, you need to have perfect circles along the curves. This is really easy to miss, and but if you do this right, the model will look much more realistic, and you'll have. It's the kind of detail that as a player you don't really notice in a conscious way. You can't really see, okay, this line is not parallel, but if you have more issues like this, they add up, and the model is definitely not going to look realistic. So this kind of feedback really helps with improving and making creating a solid model and making a believable weapon. just different example of feedback. Yeah, this is also about the circle that needs to, here also, detail that is not right. Yeah. And this is how a feedback generally can look for a weapon model. There are easy fixes. Most of them, they can be done really fast. And yeah, it's just a step that you need to do before unwrap and bake. Because if you actually skip those and you realize later on, it will be much more difficult to work on them after you do the bake of the model. So it's really important to do this just after the high polygon model is done. And they are most of them are really easy to fix, and it doesn't take that much. You just spend a few hours on them and you increase the quality of the weapon with this. We used, in order to get really good surfaces, we used ZBrush with the 3ds Max. Just one moment. I need a bit of help here, just to stop the screen sharing and go into Max and ZBrush, show you some stuff. Yeah. Okay. Vreau să trec pe... Show it. It takes a bit of time to load because it's a decimated mesh. Perfect. So this is much more clean. But if you look at the topology, it looks like this, of course. But it doesn't really matter because it offers a very clean bake. Perfect. Okay. The way we actually created model like this. I'm going to give you an example now. Good. We start with a very simple mesh, something that's done really fast as possible, and just have clean topology on it. Don't use supporting loops, no other methods like two turbo smooth modifiers or quad chamfer. Just keep the topology nice, and use the smoothing groups in order to have clean surfaces. We put a turbo smooth modifier on the model, set on smoothing groups only, and we get something like this. And that's how we managed to get really fast the shape and get all the angles right, get all the curvature right. And then go into ZBrush with this model. Can also open different weapon until it loads. Right. Okay, so we have the subdivided model here. Now we can use just use the auto group, use some groups in order to separate the parts. But I'm not gonna do that now because the model is basically consists of just one piece. Maybe this could be different mesh, but it's okay for this. And just Dynamesh. Basically, I usually set the resolution not that high, so I can get some kind of smooth transition between parts. And I really like to have these kind of transitions. They are really good for bake. But if it's too low, it's not that good also. So you need to find the right resolution for it. After doing this, I just did some clay polish modifier on it. What I really like about this method is that you can really deal with complex intersections like you see here. In reality, if you are to subdivide this model and weld all these parts, you get a really dense mesh that's really difficult to modify and iterate on it if you have some feedback. So with this method, basically you can keep a very simple object and do changes on it really fast if these changes are required by your feedback or by design. Something that happens when you do polish is that, as you can see, the edges look a bit weird. It's not really a big problem, but this can easily be fixed. Also, take a look at all this here, all the Picatinny. It's now the same surface. Imagine all those sustaining, all those edges that needed to be placed here in order to get this kind of shape. It will be crazy. This is so simple. And now to fix this issue with the weird edges that you get from polishing, I did another Dynamesh, but this time with polish activated. It kind of makes a crease on the edges, and now I can just go and polish again, maybe do some relax, deformer on it, just to get the right curvature on the edges, to get a clean bake. And yeah, as you can see, it's really clean, really easy to do. You can even put these operations on a macro, and this is how I created lots of parts. And I like that, as I said, I like this method because it's really iteration friendly. You can modify, do some changes really fast. Now, when you go into ZBrush as an artist, you're tempted to maybe use some brushes, do some extra operations on the mesh in order to add details and sculpt. but I kept this at a very basic and very simple level, basically because of iterations. Because if you really want to keep this process iterative friendly, you need to automate the process. Let's say that you do the high poly, then you do some changes in ZBrush, you go use some brushes on the model, and at one point you need to change the geometry for whatever reason. You need to do this all over again in ZBrush. So that's why it's better just to have the clean model done in 3D Studio Max with all the details necessary, keep it very simple, and don't rely that much on ZBrush. And this helped me to make some high polygon models really, really fast and easy. In order to separate, of course, you can use different groups, like, so you don't get results like here. You don't want that. But for parts that need to be intersected like this, that need to be the same, this is perfect. Oh, and this, it's really great. Yeah, this is another model that we did, Sniper, which was done with supporting loops, but still looks okay. It just takes a bit more time to work with this method. First of all, because you need to put all the supporting loops there, or if you use 2 turbo smooth modifiers or quad chamfer, it takes time. You can have some pinches on the topology. You need to fix those, and then it takes time to remove those when you do the low poly mesh, the in-game. So it adds time twice if you do the traditional modeling. With this, we just, in order to get the low poly mesh, you already have it. You maybe do some cleanup on it, and that's it. Okay, let's go back now. Perfect. Good. Yeah, here I'm going to show you also the other different methods to get a high polygon model. You have the double turbo smooth method that, as I said, it's really good and really useful. Sometimes I used it for interior parts or for more simple parts. It works. It's just that sometimes it produces some it can result in some pinches, some undesired artifacts here and there, but it's useful, and it can be a powerful tool. Some floating geometry example here. Quad chamfer, of course. It's mostly the same as turbo smooth, as turbo smooth modifier. It's really fast, really easy to do, but you need to take care with topology and bad results on corners or weird angles, intersections. And there are parts, like big parts on weapons, that are done just with this modifier. It can be used. Sometimes we used to use the norm subdivision. This is basically similar to turbo smooth. The thing with it is that you can assign a hotkey to it and just preview the model, the high polygon model, really fast just by pressing one key. It's really, really cool to use booleans because booleans are really important part of modeling. Some parts actually are easier to do with booleans than with normal conventional modeling. So parts like this, for example, they can be done with booleans. You can use operands on them. So you can actually have a live Boolean operation on it. It can be done in Max. And you can specify a target mesh and create different models for intersections and modify them along the way so you can get the desired result. This is good especially for objects with lots of planes and angles on them. Floating geometry. Before working in weapons, I used to think about floating geometry as something that you basically use on planar surfaces to add some bolts, for example. But I ended up using floating geometry for all kinds of surfaces and all kinds of details. It can be used, as you can see here, on curved surfaces. This is actually a magazine with angled surface, and it's really cool to actually put these details from floating, because you don't need to subdivide all the mesh and weld everything together. It's so easy to modify and work on it when you have them separated. Here is another example. And as long as the topology is the same, the topology of the floating geometry and the geometry underneath, it's really cool because after the bake, you're not going to see the difference. Here is more detailed example of floating geometry. Yeah, this is floating geometry used 3 times for a grip. And it worked, it baked perfectly. If you actually try to do this from just simple modeling, it can be very tricky, it can be very difficult. Maybe it can be achieved in ZBrush, but with just simple modeling, this is close to impossible. But with this, you can easily do it, and you can easily change it along the way if something is wrong or you need to do any kind of change on it. Yeah, this is some small detail that was done with floating geometry for stock. We use all kinds of scripts. This is a tool set. It's called Rapa Tools. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's for 3ds Max. Actually, it was done by one of our technical artists. And it's really cool tool to get all the modeling functions in really fast and speed up the workflow. Yeah. Here we talk basically about mapping. It's really important. I mean, you can have a really cool high polygon model, but it's also really important to have good resolution on it. And in order to have good resolution, you need to think really smart about the way you do the unwrap process. What I did was I really identified the interiors and scaled them as much as possible and identify all the parts that you don't see, that are not that important, scale them down and make sure that the parts that are visible really have good resolution, good texture on them. Actually, sometimes it even takes like I don't know, half an hour, 1 hour just to think this process and really think what's more important on that texture and think the mapping process. Another important thing about mapping and baking is to have a good relation between the way the smoothing groups are done and the UV seams. So you need to have where you have a smoothing group seam, also you need to have a mapping seam. And yeah, we use text tools for that, and sometimes area weighted normals plugin, so we can really have a clean mesh, clean topology, and have that clean normal map that I told you about at first, in order to take advantage of the substance texturing pipeline. And yeah, it's good to assign hotkeys for any kind of operations because it can really speed up the workflow and make a faster process. Now, when you create a high polygon mesh, sometimes you need to change a bit to alter reality because the model is done for a video game. In reality, lots of edges are really sharp. And it's really, this is not good for a game because it's not gonna look that nice. It's the edge, the surface is not gonna catch light and it's not gonna show the detail there. Also, substance is going to add wearing on that edge and degradation. So it's really important to exaggerate and not make sharp edges, but don't make them too soft because it will look cartoonish. For this kind of process, ZBrush is really cool because you can set how much you want to have, how soft your edges are, and they are uniform. If you are bound to topology, it will be really difficult to have a uniform model. But with ZBrush, you can really choose this on all the model. And yeah, it's good to rely on normal map. It's I mean, sometimes some artists, they think that if they put more geometry, more detail into the model, it's gonna look better just because it has more polygons. But sometimes it's just good to rely on the details offered by the normal map. For example, for this detail here, it looks really good. It's important to focus on the silhouette, because you can't fake that with normal map. But for surface details, normal map is the key. Not only because it will have a low poly count, but also because you'll have a much more optimized unwrap space. If you do a lot of details out of geometry, you'll need much more unwrap space in order to cover all those islands. So you have the geometry, the different geometry, plus the padding around it. With this, you'll have better resolution for this kind of details. Yeah, here's another screenshot with the relation between smoothing groups and UV shells. This Picatinny basically is mapped on just one stripe, as I said before, in order to optimize UV shell and also get a really clean, really good shading on the model. Another details that are done with normal map, and it's really optimized. I mean, just the focus is just on the silhouette, so that everything is rounded, and use the texture space to get good resolution. This is an in-game model, and it takes advantage of a good bake, of a good normal map, so that from the distance that you see it in the game, it looks okay. Also for in-game versions, of course, as I told you, you remove the interior elements and all the bolts and the little details that are done with the normal map. But for the gunsmith game model, where you see this much closer, you need this detail. We need these details from geometry. Here you can see something that's also really important when you bake normal maps. It's really important to understand how they are created and use beveled profiles for all the details, so that you just get a good bake. If you had like perpendicular, like straight edges, straight details, it's just not gonna bake. So it's good to have both soft edges and beveled profiles on the model. This is a slide that I really like. It's about exaggerating details for plastic parts. As you can see, we have these mold seams on the object. They exist in reality, and they can be just a bit exaggerated. They will make the object to look more interesting. Substance is gonna really take advantage of that and add some wearing on them, add some details, and provide much more interesting object that it's gonna look good both in gunsmith and in game. Now I'm gonna go. Yeah, need a bit of help for the. We're gonna do some show you some mapping tricks. Vreau să pot să fac. Sorry. That's it. We're back into Max. Cool. So yeah, after we create something like this, that, as I said, can be really, really simple object, just make sure that when we do the turbo smooth on it, there are no choppy edges and everything looks clean and sharp. We can get the high polygon model from it, really easy with ZBrush. No need for supporting loops, no need for double turbo smooth that does artifacts and pinches on the mesh. And then we need to unwrap this. At first, I mean, I never heard or never actually used UV layout. This is a really, really good software for unwrap. And I'm going to show you how I can do the unwrap in UV layout really fast and really easy. First, I'm going to just reset the unwrap for this part. I don't know if it has any unwrap on it. It doesn't matter. Okay. And then, first I go into max, into polygon mode. Okay. And I break all the seams by smoothing groups. Because I already have the smoothing groups in place. They were originally done for ZBrush to get a clean bake. This is really easy, really fast. And you can, by doing this, you can get clean surfaces on the mesh. So this is just a start for the unwrap process. If I go now and press unwrap, the seams are in the right place. Maybe in this case they could be optimized, like have the same smoothing group here, for example, because it could optimize. I'm just select similar. It could optimize the UV space. I'm gonna do this again really fast. Do the unwrap again. Good. That was it. That was the unwrap. And then I'm gonna go into UV layout with this model. Set on edit, of course, because I want to keep the mapping from 3ds Max. Now, UV layout is not an easy software. I mean, it is an easy software, but it's really hard. It can be really hard to get into because it has, I mean, the interface is very simple. It relies a lot on hotkeys. So it's not that friendly. But once you learn the hotkeys and learn how it works, I think it's really awesome. And it makes mapping fun. It makes doing the UVs fun and really fast. It's a very fast process. And yeah, here is the mapping from Max. And what I do after I have this, I just take all the pieces here, or the islands, one by one, drag them out, and with just one simple click, it has a very good relax algorithm. It just relaxes the surface. For example, if I have something like this, I just press R, and that's it. It's really simple. And you can even do things like copy the unwrap from one surface to another, like this. Yep, so now all the Picatinny rails are mapped in the same way. And I just take them one by one, just make sure they're okay. I really like how it deals with cylinders and shapes like this. You just press one key and you have it's important to align the UV shell so that you can get a really clear texture on it with no angled lines on it, so you have no anti-aliasing issues. For stuff like that, you can easily just do this. It's actually really easy and really fun to do unwrap with UV layout. And the packing is also really good. We actually, as I said, we discovered this tool along the way. We didn't use it at first. And what really attracted me at first, it was the packing, that the packing is done really good. And it's really fast and optimized. You have 3 levels of quality. It takes longer for mid and best. You can use fast just to preview. And you can even see the ratio of mapping that you have, so you can work on increasing it and have better and more efficient optimal mapping. Something that's also really cool about UV layout is that you can easily see if you have some distortion on an island. Like for example here, you can see that it's marked with red because it's not optimal. So you can identify really fast is there something wrong about it, or even you have bigger resolution, it goes like this. So that's really fun, because sometimes you can do the mapping thing that everything is right, but maybe you have something that's, I don't know, mapped in a wrong way. With this, you can easily identify and fix it. So yeah, for me, this software made mapping really fun and really easy and fast to do in combination with Max, of course. Yeah. Now let's go a bit here. I mean, for a model like this, for example, the workflow is basically, as I showed you before, do the smoothing groups in order to get the right angles, the clean surfaces. After that, break the shells in Max, go into UV layout, and just make sure that everything is right and there are no weird mapping problems on them, like maybe some overlapping surfaces or some faces that are not relaxed. I want to show something cool now in regarding the legendary weapons. Apart from the normal weapons that can be, of course, customized and painted, there are also legendary weapons. Textures are done with substance. So yeah, that's why it's really important to have a clean bake and no problems on normal map, because they will show when you put all the procedure textures here and materials. Let's take a look at another example. Maybe this and maybe this. Until this opens up, no problem. Just gonna drag another model here. Okay. Maybe take a look at, yeah, let's see. Perfect. It was really fun to work on this. The way the pipeline was basically, you start with a concept. We have concept art, and the artist creates the texture in substance based on that concept. It's really cool that you can really think about materials and details and add some really personalized inscriptions on them. Really go crazy with it, like this one. This is called the butcher. Yeah. And you can really take the for this we really took the time to put small details and all kinds of substance materials on it, make it look interesting, and basically tell a story, so that every legendary weapon tells a story and has a background. Yeah, maybe this one also. Perfect. Good. Same here. All right. So now I'm going to show this model again. Uh, and yeah, regarding the ZBrush method that I showed you before, now you can see that, yeah, all these parts, they were done this way. And this was really, really cool. It was really easy to do, really fast. And let's say, as I said, if you have some changes that you want to do, you can just do them in Max really fast and then just update the ZBrush model. Some of the details, I used to keep them in Max, like little threads like this, name them micro details, and just keep them in Max. Don't rely on ZBrush for everything, because if you need details this size, you need to go at a very high subdivision rate, and this can really slow down the process and make very, very sharp edges, which I don't want to create. So I also relied on Max for all kind of small details. Keep them in Max as a separate mesh with by creating them basically by using 2 turbo smooth modifiers or quad chamfers, and sometimes even supporting loops, and just rely on ZBrush for the important parts. Opening substance. Perfect. This is was a weapon inspired by Assassin's Creed. Really cool to work on. And it's actually it's really optimized. I also like that the mesh is not that high poly, but with texture on it, it looks good. Open the same one. It's okay. Cool. Just gonna close this right now. And right now I want to show you something. See if it works. Nope. I can just 1 second. Yeah, some issues with the video, but it's okay. 1 moment. It's okay. It's really fast. Okay. Yeah. Just extracted that video. This is also another fan-made video from that shows the. Yeah, I think we have some. It's okay. It's okay. Fan-made video that shows the some legendary weapons. And yeah, they were really, really fun to work on, and you can really go crazy with substance for this kind of models. And there are so many of them. That's the London call. Yeah, some of them are really funny, a bit weird, but they are cool. And yeah, they use all kinds of details. They have all kinds of details on them, some wrappings, extra geometry, like some of them have skulls on them. Maybe just skip this a bit. The blaze. Nice. Yeah, so for this kind of models, as I said, it's really important to have a story behind, and when you look at it, you kind of imagine what's the main theme for that weapon. Cool. Now go back to the presentation. See it? Perfect. So we reached the end of the slides. Thank you for your attention. I think you found this interesting, and that you've seen some cool stuff. And if you have any questions about the process or whatever, now it's the time to ask. Well, to be honest, at first it took much longer. It took longer because, as I told you before, we didn't have all the pipeline in place and the tools. But after finding certain shortcuts, certain tricks to make it more efficient, it took less time. Like tricks like I showed you before, it can be 10-15 days for model. The thing is that it really depends on the complexity of the weapons, because the models are very different. Some of them have really complicated geometry on it, or extra parts that need to be done. Some of them are much simpler. But I think it's from 2-3 weeks for a weapon. Yeah. Basically, yeah, but as I said, it depends a lot on the complexity of the model. You can have very different models. Yeah, wait a second. I'm gonna go back because I have the presentation and can take advantage of it. That's it. The thing is, we use the substance, as I told you before. And the thing with substance is that what you need to do is you need to provide a really clean and really good quality or normal map. And you can generate all the textures based on the ambient occlusion, position map, curvature of that object. So it was fast and iterative process. I'm not a technical artist. I just use the tools, but I really like this because it really allowed me to do changes really fast. So, for example, let's say that I create a weapon, and at one point I do the texture, and then I change my mind and I want to do some different thing on it, change the UVs, change the parts. I do that, I rebake, and then I get the texture just like that. Yeah, these are legendary weapons. They cannot be customized. And yeah, for these ones, textures are done custom. Yeah. But still, use Substance Painter, of course, which is fast to create. I think at the end of the day, what's important is to have a good base. Have a clean high polygon mesh, high quality high polygon mesh, clean bake. And if you have this as a starting point, no matter what happens, let's say that you need to do textures procedurally, or you need to make the custom textures, it's a good start, and it will give you a really, I mean, you'll have, I don't know, maybe just 1 or 2 days for that texture to finish it. But you need to start with that clean, good base, so that you don't spend time fixing all the issues and tweaking the model. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Great. So, yeah. Substance is integrated. First of all, as I said, I'm not a technical artist, so I can tell you things from my perspective. The way it works, Substance is integrated inside the editor, and what we feed the editor is the geometry of the model and the normal map. Also, we have some material maps for to get the materials, and some other maps so we can get variety on the model. But yeah, everything is done with Substance. And yeah, as I said, this process is really cool. It's so cool to use Substance basically because of the speed. And of the fact that you can do changes along the way, you can update the materials along the way. Let's say that at one point you want to improve or make some changes on the metal, on the plastic, it can be done in one batch for everything. So it was really cool to work with this. I mean, I imagine, because I'm telling you, I had so many changes. Sometimes maybe because of some retakes, or sometimes I change my mind. I want to do a better unwrap on the model. I find some free space there and I want to make it all over again. I'm a bit perfectionist. And with this kind of tools, you can just do the whole process really fast. You don't need to spend a lot of time on texture. Yeah. We used, it's the weapon model, the geometry. Yeah. Yep. Sure. What do you mean by that? Uh, Designer or painter? Yeah. Well, I don't think so. I think it's about you. I mean, if you create a substance in Designer, I think it's about how you create that substance, and if you make it optimized, you'll get also good. Make it efficient time-wise. So I think it's a software for the future. If you ask me, it's really, really cool. And yeah, I think I encourage you to work with it and give it a shot, because it's worth it. Try Substance Painter, even Designer. It's really worth it. Yeah, awesome. Good. Okay. Thanks. And I hope that you enjoyed this presentation and Dev.Play in general. And thank you and have a good day. See you guys.